Today's video does come with a subject warning. It's a stalker video, so viewer discretion is advised. And if you have a story you would like to send my way, just go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to do so. And of course, thank you. Way back whenever I was a little boy, me and my family used to make the drive from our home to my grandparents' house up north. And we would stay there for the end of the year and the beginning of the next, and then would head back south. Honestly, I don't remember how long it took to get from point A to point B, but I remember it being a long time, of course, as a kid. It always felt like it took forever, and I would get increasingly impatient on the ride there. Because of that, my parents always tried to make stops when I would hit my peak. Obviously, I was very young, maybe 7 at the oldest, so it wasn't like I was older and throwing a tantrum. I was still a pretty young boy and just really didn't like sitting still. There was one rest stop between home and my grandparents' house that I really liked stopping at, because they had some really neat animal statues out front near a small playground area, and there was a McDonald's that was actually built in the parking lot area of said rest stop. When you're that age, who doesn't love colorful animals and McDonald's? Unfortunately, my appreciation for the place very quickly went away when the incident that I'm writing about occurred, mostly because I was terrified that it would happen again, however unlikely that actually was. That year, we were driving up to my grandparents' house as we always did for the holidays, and in that year my mom was actually pregnant with my sister, so we were stopping more than we usually did. We got to the area where the rest stop that I mentioned above is, and I asked my dad if we were going to see the statues. At this point it was starting to snow a bit, and my dad mentioned that he wouldn't mind stopping, but that we couldn't play on the playground because of the weather. I was a bit upset at this. I wanted to play in the snow, obviously, but he was pretty steadfast about the fact that we would stop, take some pictures, get our snacks and whatnot, and then get back on the road. We pulled into the rest stop, and the snow was starting to come down a bit more. It was actually starting to stick to the ground, and there were some small patches of ice in various spots as well from when it had been raining just prior to the snow. We parked, all got out, and my dad started heading towards the statues, warning us of a slick spot on the walkway so that we didn't slip. He wanted to quickly get his annual photograph of the family around the big brown bear statue, and then get out of there. As we were headed towards the statue, I got hit with the urge to go to the bathroom. Like, really bad. I told my dad that I had to go, and he asked me if I could wait, but it was a nuclear threat at that point. Like, if I didn't go right then I was going to need new pants. This is one of those rest stops where the restrooms weren't inside the building, they were on the outside. So, he told me to go ahead and go, and that he would be waiting right there when I got out. I ran into the men's room and did my business, and when I got out, I noticed that there was an older gentleman in the restroom at one of the urinals. But I ignored him, and walked past him to get to the sink so I could wash my hands. It was while I was washing them that the man stepped away from the urinal to get behind me, which, looking back, I realize now that he didn't adjust his pants. Or flush. So, I don't think he was really going. It was like he was just standing at the urinal to wait. I didn't notice it back then because I was honestly not paying attention. I was just trying to wash my hands and be done with it. I look in the mirror, and he and I make eye contact. I see that he's staring at me with a very happy grin on his face. I tried to look away, but the minute that I made eye contact, he moved to initiate conversation. He looked down at me and said, "Hey, how are you? Are you enjoying the weather?" I was enjoying it, as I loved the snow and we didn't get a lot where I lived. I smiled and said that I liked the snow and that it was neat. The man laughed and said that he used to like the snow until he got old. I made a comment about how I would always like the snow, and he just once again laughed. I finished washing my hands, and I went over to get a paper towel, and the guy followed me over towards the door and just kept talking about the weather. He was also asking me if I really liked to play in the snow and just stuff like that. It really felt like this was just some old guy that was making conversation with me about the snow. I didn't feel scared of him, and being like 7 at the time, he kind of reminded me of my grandfather. I wasn't feeling like I needed to run or be scared of this guy. Then, all hell seemed to break loose. I finished drying my hands, and I went to exit the restroom. The man was behind me, so I held the door open to be polite, and as soon as I stepped away from the door, he literally swung his arm around me and picked me up, and then started running towards the parking lot. I think he looked older than he really was, because if he was my grandfather's age, then I don't think he would have been able to grab me and run like he did. As soon as I realized what was going on, I started screaming as loudly as I possibly could. My dad heard me, saw what was going on, and started running toward us. But this guy had a lead, and he was heading straight for a car that was in the parking lot, and it honestly looked like he was going to get there before my dad would be able to catch up to him. That is when fate took over, and I was saved by a miraculous twist. The man that was carrying me was paying a lot of attention to getting to his car, and not a lot of attention to the ground in front of him. He ended up catching his foot on an ice patch that I mentioned earlier, and because I was kicking and shifting his weight, he slipped. And when he slipped, he went head first into his own car. Thankfully, I pretty much just fell to the ground, but this man, he smacked his head on the bumper of his own vehicle, and he was out cold. It honestly felt like it played out almost like a comedy movie with how it happened, though nobody was laughing. My dad grabbed me and started shouting for someone to call 911, mostly because this guy looked like he was pretty messed up. The police and an ambulance arrived, and they took him away, and the officers took our statements. I have no idea if the man made it, or if he was really messed up, but in my opinion, he kind of had it coming. I don't want to wish ill on anyone, really, but this man tried to kidnap me. And, well, like I said, fate took over. I don't like thinking about what would have happened if he hadn't tripped and fallen, but I think it's pretty obvious it would not have been good. I'm thankful it didn't go that far, but I will say that this event really ruined that rest stop for me, and kind of made me afraid to do anything alone in public. I'm up late reading these, so I finally decided to share my creepy encounter from a while back. This was about 15 years ago. I was around 25 years old and living in the Midwest at the time. My friends and I decided to go out for the night. We're both girls and were single at the time, and somehow we decided on a towny type of bar. I don't remember how we landed on it. I had never been there before, and I don't think that she had either. I guess we were just trying something new. I don't remember a ton about the appearance, but I do remember that it was off a semi-busy road in a suburb. You had to drive up a dirt road to the top of the hill, maybe a quarter of a mile, before you got to it perched at the top. It definitely wasn't our usual scene, but we were up for trying something new, even though it felt a little weird being sort of close to civilization, but at the same time feeling far away from it. I'm driving and she's in the front seat. I'm going through the parking lot, using that term loosely, as it was mainly just a gravel lot in front of this bar. We didn't see any spots available, but as we were weaving through, we spotted a car backing out, so I waited for him to leave so that I could pull in. It wasn't until I was pulling in that I noticed another car in the aisle across from me, on the opposite side of the car backing out. I'm usually pretty aware of other drivers in lots, and I would have let him have that spot if it was obvious he was there before me and waiting for it. But he definitely was not there first. So I just figured he was looking for a spot too and was letting me pull in before he passed. So I pull in, and we're taking off our seatbelts about to go in, when I noticed that the car was still just sitting there, in the same spot in the aisle with its headlights on. It creeped me out a little, so I told my friend to wait for him to go before we went in. So we sit there, and I'm watching through my rear view mirror. It must have been at least 2 minutes, which felt so long. He finally starts to move slowly, but to my surprise, he doesn't drive past us. Instead, he pulls off to the edge of the dirt road near the bar entrance and parallel parks and turns off his car, probably about 100 feet behind my car. Okay, I thought, he's just going to make his own parking spot. That's fine. I tell my friend that I still want to wait for him to go in first because I'm afraid he's going to key my car or something because he's upset that I took the last spot. So we continue to wait. About 5 minutes or so, and no one is getting out of this car. By that point, I was thoroughly creeped out, and I told her let's just forget this bar and leave. I turn my car on again and then turn on my headlights. About a second after, I see that same car behind me turn his headlights on too. I wasn't sure if he was going to take my spot or what, but I put my car in reverse immediately, as that just gave me the chills. I back out quickly and I head to go downhill to get back to the main road. That same car started moving too, and, to my shock, he didn't take my spot, but instead followed me downhill. I turned right onto the main road and drove probably half a mile before turning into a brightly lit McDonald's. He had followed me up to that point, but kept driving after I turned into there. I still have no clue if my gut instinct kicked in, and it saved us from something horrible that night, or if it was just some sicko playing a prank. Either way, every now and then, I think about those headlights popping up on my rearview mirror, and it still gives me the chills. So, trust your gut if something doesn't feel right. For the weekend, I wanted to visit my boyfriend. He lives 2 hours away, and I always go by train. I'm not easily spooked, but I always keep an eye out. A girl's gotta do what a girl's gotta do. Am I right? 1 hour into the trip, it was around 2000 hours, and I see 2 men getting into the same train compartment as me. I was sitting in a 2-seat, the seat next to me was empty, and in front of me was a seat for 4 people. So 2 pairs of seats facing each other. The men came in being very loud, even though it was a silent compartment, but nobody said anything because they already seemed very suspicious. From the moment they stepped into the train, probably before they got in, they had their eyes fixated on me. They stepped in through the doors and sat in the seat in front of mine, the 4-seat, and from then on they kept an eye on me, while discussing things with each other in a language that I did not understand. Like every other girl, I get stared at frequently, especially when I wear my hair down. It normally makes me feel a bit awkward, but I never feel unsafe when this happens. Until yesterday. But they were staring at me in every way possible. Through the chairs, standing up, sitting down, bending over to get a good look, through the reflection of the mirror, and by getting up and walking past me. They were taking turns in walking over to the other compartment of the train. The other compartment was only separated from mine with a glass door. Every time one of them got up, they both started staring at me. Then one of them went away and the other one had clear vision of me and kept staring at me. He poked his head through the middle of the seats and offered me chocolate, which I politely refused. Then the other one came back, and 5 minutes later, the man who did not go away yet went away in the same way. They kept taking turns and walking away, and every time one of them got up, the one who remained seated kept an eye on the other, and on me. Each time they were sitting across from each other, they would discuss things, but I couldn't translate it. They kept looking at me and then started discussing again. When I had 20 minutes of my trip left, a lot of people got out at one stop. So it was just me, them, and one other male at that point. The moment the doors were about to close, one of the creepy men started walking through the doors to check to see if there were people coming in, and maybe to check to see if there was security. I don't know why he did it, but when he came back, he scanned the train to see how many people were still on, I think. From that moment on, they both got in seats facing me. They would not stop staring at this point. As you can imagine, I panicked and was stressing the F out. So I slowly turned around to look behind the glass doors to see if there were more people that could maybe help me. And, to my luck, there were more people there. So I slowly and very softly put on my jacket. We still had more than 10 minutes left then. And I kid you not even 2 minutes later, one of the men starts getting dressed too. He took his purse and his jacket and kept looking at me and fixating on me while still discussing something with the other man. This was where I really panicked. I had already let my friend know what was going on, and my boyfriend was already at the train stop where I was supposed to get out. Then, I contemplated what the smartest thing to do was, because there is an emergency number on the train that you can call or text if you feel unsafe. But I had a gut feeling that this would not help me. So, I grabbed my bags, got up, and I walked through the glass door to the other compartment. I sat facing them so that I could see what they were doing. They both got up, grabbed their bags, and started walking towards me. Mind you, they were sitting closest to the exit, so there was absolutely no reason for them to take this route too. I rapidly started to talk to someone in the seat next from mine, and I asked if he could help me, because I was getting followed and watched by two grown men. He said that he also thought that they were very suspicious and was getting worried for me. He asked me to sit next to him, so he could keep me a little safer and possibly distract the men or something. Then he distracted me a little bit and asked me some questions about my life. When the two creeps saw that I was seated next to that man, they were already coming my way and were making their way through the doors of the compartment. They are glass doors, so we could see each other very clearly. I hadn't shown my fear, but I was shaking so uncontrollably that they must have seen how scared I was. The moment they got through that door, they saw me sitting next to the other man, and the creeps exchanged looks, looked at me, discussed something, looked at me again, and then turned around and went the other way. They were walking to the exit of the train, where, again, there's a glass door, so we could still see each other. The whole time they were standing around the exits, they were looking at me with a very creepy and disturbed look on their faces. I describe it as, you got away, but you won't be so lucky next time. That's how it felt. The man that I was sitting next to also got the feeling of this and was calming me down. He told me he wasn't going to let me get off the train by myself, and that he would wait with me until my boyfriend arrived. That was amazing, and I felt very comforted. But then our stop came, and we walked to our side of the exit, and then came to a realization. In the exit of the train, there were two other men standing with the same kind of looks as the two creeps. They were speaking the same language, and they acted weird too. These men were probably the men who the two creeps were visiting every few minutes. The men at the exit saw me, looked at me with that creepy look, but then the man who was keeping me safe made sure to show them that he was walking with me, and immediately they looked away. They also covered their faces with their hoods. The doors opened and they nearly sprinted out of there, just as the other two creeps did. Then the man who escorted me out waited with me until we found my boyfriend, and then he went on with his day. We both could not thank him enough for keeping me safe. I thought I lived in a very safe country in Europe, but I think that as long as you're a young woman on your own, you will never be 100% safe while traveling or being alone. I hate thinking of what would have happened if I was not helped by the man in the other compartment. I wish I could have thanked him with gifts or a nice gesture, but I don't know his name and will probably never see him again. So, to the man who saved me, I thank you with all my heart. Okay, this was a really long story, but in real time, this only lasted around an hour. I hope that some people read this and really hope we all stay safe. Just be on the lookout for each other and help someone when you can. And thanks for reading. I'm 19 years old and living far from home in a studio room. I'm often up late, and last week I was just doing some laundry at around 11 p.m.-ish. I saw a man sitting in the lobby. I saw him around a bit at night, but I didn't think much of it. I'm in the laundry room, and I had just put my clothes in the dryer, and I hear the laundry room door beeping, which meant that someone was coming in. There was the man, standing there with no clothes to wash, just staring at me. I maneuvered around him and headed to the lifts. He followed me quickly and cornered me and asked me for my Snapchat. I was tired, and I just wanted to get back to my room, so I stupidly gave it to him. I figured he would message me and try to flirt. I would say, "I have a boyfriend, sorry if you thought this was anything else," and that would be the end of it. I'm about 5'4" with very long red hair, and I'm half Indian and English, with Afghanistani descent, so I'm white passing but kind of exotic. People tend to stare at me. Anyways, he starts messaging me. It's kind of normal, and then he starts saying weird stuff like, "I saw you a month ago, and I was impressed. I've been visiting a friend and staying here. And I've been watching you. I noticed that you come out mostly at night." He told me that he was Saudi Arabian and only visiting for 5 more days. Then, it gets worse. He says, "I love you. I can't help it." And then I say that I have a boyfriend. He says, "I only want you," and continues to completely ignore that. He asks to come to my room, and I say no, and then he wanted a hug. He asked me if I lived alone and if I was a virgin. He kept saying that he loved me and that I was perfect for him, that I impressed him. At that point, I recorded all the messages on Snapchat, spoke to him a little bit more to gather evidence so that I could take it to the reception in the morning. He'd been watching me for a month. I got my guy friend who lives on the 2nd floor to walk me down to the laundry room. We sat in the student lounge area and my friend calmed me down. I was shaking with adrenaline and fear. We saw him around the laundry room again looking for me, but luckily I'd already picked it up. I run back to my room and my friend says that I can stay in his room, but I said that it was okay and I would just lock my door. It's about 1 in the morning, and I hear someone outside my room trying to get in. I ask my friend if he's outside my room, and he says no. I just froze. I didn't want to make a sound. I felt sick to my stomach and helpless. Eventually, it stopped, and whoever it was went away. In the morning, I reported this to reception and then went to stay a few days with my boyfriend, and then after went to London to visit a friend. and last night was the first time that I'd spent a night in my room since this happened. I'm very paranoid now. Sadly, I should probably be used to this. It's not the first time that I've been harassed like this. One guy tried to kiss me in a club by grabbing my head, and a bunch of other things have happened that I won't go into here. But, anyways, I'm terrified to go outside my room after dark. I'm constantly looking over my shoulder and feeling paranoid. I just keep blaming myself for being too nice, and I know that it's my long, thick hair that seems to attract people's eyes to me. I just want to cut it all off. Has anyone had a similar experience, and how did you deal with it? Reception still hasn't updated me on if he's still in the building. When I was in college, I was out and about with my then boyfriend. We had gone to dinner and then gone to Walmart to get some typical college food so that we could survive a Sunday in. I was dressed up in a casual, dressy fit. We decided to split up while we shopped split apart, maybe to do quicker shopping, but I don't remember the exact reason why. I was wandering the grocery aisles, and I noticed this girl who was about my age. In a friendly manner, we casually smiled at each other and continued on shopping. It didn't seem weird at first, but I kept noticing her in the same aisle as me, and a big, muscular man was never far behind us. Eventually, I texted my boyfriend and asked where he was, and continued on shopping. Next thing I know, the girl approaches me and says how she loves my jacket. I say, "Thanks, Maurice's," and tried to move on. She stops me and says something along the lines of, "Hey, you look like you're my age and you seem really nice. I just moved here for a new job and a company that my friends and I are starting," and then tried to ask me questions about where I was from. I was vague and untrusting with what I said, noting that this was not normal. And then she said, "I'm looking for more people like you and I to work for our company. It's kind of a warehouse job, and I would love for you to be one of our bookkeepers. You should give me your number." I said, "Well, that's nice of you to offer me a job, but I'm not a desk person, and I already have a job that I love." And she said, "Well, that's a bummer. I thought we might work well together. Well, would you want to give me your number so that we can hang out? I would love to have a friend who can show me around the city." I realized that I wasn't getting out of this situation until my boyfriend showed up, or I gave her my number. Eventually, I rattled off a fake phone number and said, "Hey, I'll catch you later. I gotta go." And then I walked away, praying that my boyfriend would be near so we could get the hell out of there. While I was looking for him and trying to call him, the girl caught up to me and said, "I tried to call you, but it said the number was out of service." And as I tried to come up with a quick excuse and say, "Maybe you typed it wrong," she saw that my iPhone was unlocked in my hand. She quickly snatched it and called herself on it. I was so flustered and mad at her that I snatched my phone right back when my boyfriend came around the corner. He instantly recognized that something was up and said that we needed to go. When the girl saw him approach me, she looked so disappointed to see him and stopped trying to interact. We ended up buying nothing and leaving. That night we called our parents and the police. The police said they didn't think it was anything ill-intended, but I was sure that it was probably trafficking. I was going to switch my phone number because I was so scared. I blocked them, turned off all location access on my phone. I was too scared to go anywhere alone for a while. I even told my coach so that she knew. A couple of days later, I got a text from a random number. It was the girl. She sent a picture of my best friend, who was out drinking downtown with some of her friends. The text said, "I met your best friend. She gave me your number because I told her I was looking for new friends. She showed me a picture of you, and I said, 'What a coincidence, I met her the other day and lost her number when I got a new phone.'" About 2 minutes later, I got a text from my best friend that said, "I gave your number to a girl who wants to make friends around here and is looking for people to join her business. And since I moved this week, I thought of you." I freaked out that she was with her. I told her to get away and to not leave alone with her. I stayed up worried until my best friend got home. She said that she was fine. Otherwise, I would have gone to pick her up. The next day, my friend apologized and told me to block the number. My friend and her group tried to ditch her, but she kept showing up at the bars they were at. She said that the girl was relentless and texted her all night trying to get my friend to go hang out at her place. My best friend also said that when she asked about the business, the girl wouldn't give her many details other than it was a warehouse somewhere, that it would pay her great, and it was in town, and if she wanted a tour, she would take her. We never heard from this girl again. Today I was listening to a podcast and they mentioned different sex trafficking tactics. 2 of the tactics were vague jobs where they would pay you well, but needed you to come meet them to give you more information, and a new-to-town girl who desperately needs new friends. I've been thinking about this all morning, and I'm glad that I felt uncomfortable and my friend didn't go with this girl. But I am also mostly mad the cops ignored my concerns and said it was nothing. I hope that they wrote down the tip that night at least, but I doubt that they did. One Saturday morning, I, 21, female, decided to go to my local Goodwill. I'm disabled and suffer from chronic pain. I use a cane on my good days and a wheelchair on bad days. Luckily for me, this was a good day. I parked out front and got out of my car and immediately noticed a man sitting at the far corner in front of the Goodwill. As I was walking into the Goodwill, he shouted, "Miss, do you have any extra time for me today?" I had never seen this man in my life and really did not want to engage with him, so I politely said, "No sir, not today, I'm sorry," and continued walking. He shouted something else at me, but I couldn't make out what he said, and was afraid if I stopped and asked, then he would try to engage me in conversation. I ignored him and continued walking. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him begin to stand up. I walked faster and I entered the Goodwill, thinking that I was in the clear. I began walking along the front of the store, just browsing the items. My heart dropped when I glanced through the front window, and I saw him walking briskly towards the entrance. I immediately thought that he might be following me, and this has happened to me before at Goodwills. Every time I've wound up in uncomfortable conversations where I have to continuously decline the advances of men that I'm really not interested in. It's gotten to the point where I wear a fake ring when I go out so that I can say that I'm married, because sometimes they accept that answer better than me simply not being interested. In that moment, the disability left my body because I picked up my cane and booked it to the nearby rack of ball gowns, and I hid behind them. Through the gaps, I observed him storming into the store and start to look through the aisles. I was scared because he looked angry. Maybe because I had ignored him. I didn't mean to be rude, but I thought I had made it clear in a polite way that I did not want to speak with him. I don't think that it's wrong of me to want to go thrifting without having to engage with random men. A kind woman nearby came up to the ball gowns where I was hiding and pretended to inspect them. She whispered, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I think that the man in the blue is looking for me." She said that she thought so as well, and I asked her if any of the nearby dressing rooms were open. She pointed to the one that was, and when I saw that the man had his back turned, I dived underneath the door and locked it behind me. I called my boyfriend from the dressing room in tears and asked him to come to the store. Soon, I heard a knock at the door. The kind woman had gotten the manager. And she told me that, after the man had looked through all the aisles, He walked out, grabbed his bag, and left the area. They closed the dressing room that I was in, and they let me hide in it until my boyfriend arrived. Then, one of the male employees and my boyfriend walked me to my car, and that was the end of it. Nothing really dramatic happened, and since we were in public, I don't think that my life was in danger, but it was an unsettling experience. I hate to think of the possible confrontation we might have had if he had found me. I'm just so thankful to the Goodwill employees and the kind woman who helped me that day. Okay, so to start, at the time, I was 19, female, and working an early morning job at Safeway. I would leave the house around 5:30 every morning. It was during the winter, so I would often wear a blanket to my car and sit in it for a while waiting for it to warm up. So, one day, my mom stopped by and parked in front of this man's apartment, which happens to overlook where my car was parked. He got upset that she wasn't in a spot, and that was the first time I ever even noticed him. He looked around 70, had a gray beard, was pretty tall, and was white as well. Anyways, she ended up moving the car and nothing else happened that day. But I think that's the day that he noticed me and my roommate, also 19 female. We did live alone, though I've always been borderline paranoid, so I've always stayed aware of my surroundings. Soon after our encounter, I noticed when I would go to work, I had to pass near his apartment, that his lights would suddenly be on every morning at 5:30, when I would be leaving. I didn't think too much of it and continued on, though I started to notice once I would get in my car, he would be outside walking around and passed behind my car, which I definitely flagged as weird. This continued for a few weeks, but soon enough, I noticed his lights would be on and his blinds would be all the way open. Very weird considering it was still dark, 5:30 a.m., and he didn't do that prior. Anyways, I stayed alert, and I started waking my roommate up when I left just in case something weird ever happened. Side note, at this time my roommate had a car that wouldn't lock. We didn't live in the best area, so she didn't keep anything valuable in her car, just random stuff, including a high school picture. One day, someone broke into her car and didn't do anything, but left her picture on her seat facing upwards. We always found that weird and we didn't know who did it. Fast forward to one day, and I was super paranoid at this point. I was convinced that he was going to approach me or do something weird. It was a gut feeling. I was walking to my car, and I had to have my back faced towards his window in order to get to my car. I was talking myself down, saying nothing's gonna happen, you're safe, etc. Then, my brain told me that I needed to turn around, so I did. He was at his window, blinds open, staring at me. When he noticed I turned around, he moved out of sight super fast. I got freaked out and I got in my car and I locked it. Then I called my roommate to tell her about it, and I tried to leave as fast as possible. While I was getting situated, he was walking behind my car and I was trying to stay calm. I ended up leaving and I don't know where he went. After this encounter, I changed my shifts to afternoon, due to safety, and me and my roommate decided to move. We've never had anything happen since. This always creeped me out, and I wonder what would have happened had I kept working mornings or stayed at that apartment. This was a few years ago in my old house, around Halloween. One day, I, 43, male, was home alone in the house. I have a wife, 3 kids, and a dog, I'm in my basement cutting wood and working when all of a sudden I hear thumping on the ceiling above me, first level floor. It's rhythmic and almost perfectly in beat. I'm a handyman and I do a lot of my own fixing, and I know the usual sound that houses make. This was not usual. I start to follow the thumping around on the first floor. It's as if someone or something is walking around. I call out my wife's name, no answer. My kids, no answer. Just soft moaning that's getting louder with the thumps. My dog is with me in the basement, and following the sound with me with his tail straight up, completely silent. And this was weird because I have a loud and jumpy dog. I then slowly follow the thumping to the steps, and I hear a weak old woman's voice calling for Jimmy. Not my name, but my name does start with a J. Over and over. Ignoring my hellos, she keeps walking around my first floor, calling out, moaning, and thumping. I grab my dog by the collar and leave out the basement door and walk around the outside of my house. It is worth noting that I've had a lot of weird supernatural things happen in my life, especially around Halloween, but I could feel that this was different. Very different. I go up to the street and there's a younger couple calling out for someone, let's say Nancy, for the sake of this. I go up to them and say, "Are you Jimmy?" The young guy looks at me, and simultaneous relief and confusion cross his face. He tells me that's his dad's name, but that he passed years ago. It turns out, Nancy was his mom, with some kind of mental issue. She'd snuck out of their house and up the road. Her family lived in my house before we didn't know that, and she was having some kind of episode. And she went looking for her husband in her home. Oh, and also, she has a wooden leg. I don't know the story, but that's what the thumping was. We got her home safely, and I also double-locked my doors from that point on. So that, my friends, was a collection of true scary stranger and stalker stories, scary encounter stories, creepy encounter stories, stalker, whatever you want to call it. Stories where people are creepy. People do weird things. People are being the worst versions of themselves. We here at As the Raven Dreams, we being me, I guess, and my audience, we're the best versions of ourselves, as I always say at the ending, right? These are not stories that describe us, but they are stories that can serve, to some extent, as cautionary tales for those of us out there. Trust your instinct, pay attention to your surroundings, try to stay out of these kinds of situations if you can. Not saying it's always possible, just saying do your best. And yeah, stay safe out there, of course. And yeah, so this is my Thursday video this week. So again, Thursday being a weird day for a video for Raven, right? I know. We're on day 4 of the week, and this is the 4th video. So, still more to come. Just doing a little experiment here, having a little fun with some stuff, so hopefully you guys are enjoying it. If you are, please hit that thumbs up button. Let me know you liked the video. You can also subscribe to the channel if you're new and liked what you heard. If you're feeling ever so bold, you can go down below and leave me a comment, letting me know how your day is going, letting me know what your favorite type of music is to listen to while you're relaxing. I have gotten really into some dark ambient music mixes while I'm recording specifically. There's a channel called Dreamscape. They have 470k subs. They don't need my shout out, but I love their music. Their stuff is really good. Iron Cthulhu Apocalypse is another one that has really good ambient tracks. I like to put them on, drop them down to volume 2, just level 2, and record. And it works really well. So check them out if you haven't. But yeah, let me know what you like to listen to. You can't post links, but you can let me know what you listen to in, like, words. So, yeah. All that said, friends, remember you are loved, you are valid, you are important, you're the best you that you can be. Never let anyone tell you otherwise, and never forget it. And of course, until I see you again, friends, much love and sleep well.